We're thrilled to have welcomed our first grandbaby recently. But growing this precious human hasn't been easy on our daughter. The unrelenting pregnancy fatigue really took it out of her.
One thing that helped was keeping her fluids up, and she loved Rehydrate. Rehydrate is an essential electrolyte drink made by some great guys right here in Brizzy. It's safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding and is like a magical little energy and hydration boost for mum and bub.
If you're growing a little human or are just feeling a little rundown, grab some at Coles today.
This is the Happy Families Podcast. Hello, my name's Dr. Justin Coulson. Welcome. If you want to have a happier family, this is the podcast for you. Today, my topic is this: the 5 things every child should hear their parents say to them every day. And in my Ask Dr. Justin segment coming up, we'll be talking about what do you do when your toddler keeps on swearing. A few years ago, our church organised a daddy-daughter ball, and all the dads who had daughters were asked to make sure that they were there and that they had their girls with them. And we were asked to bring along a handwritten letter for our daughters. The letter had to chat about the reasons that we loved them, we thought highly of them. I obviously had a lot of writing to do. I've got 6 daughters. Fortunately, I only had to take the eldest 3 because the little ones were too young. But during the evening, each dad was asked to take his daughter into a beautifully decorated room, sit down and read his daughter her letter. I'm probably oversharing a little bit here, but I've got to tell you, I bawled my eyes out as I sat there reading my letters to my girls. I like to think that I'm a pretty loving dad. I like to think that I tell them that I love them quite a lot, and I listen lots and we talk lots. But to stop and really pay attention to the things that I wanted them to hear and to share them from my heart, it was an amazing experience. Well, there were 3 things that I really wanted them to know, and I told them each individually these 3 things, along with a few other bits and pieces. I thought about it a lot before I did it, and I decided that my children needed to know these 3 things more than anything else. I told them, first of all, you were wanted so very, very much. Second, when we found out we were having you, I was so excited. And third, I told them that I loved them. And it was a really special moment. It was something that I'll treasure, and I hope that I will always remember it. And remembering the story reminded me that I wanted to share with you the things that kids need to hear every single day. I wrote a blog about this a while back. It was one of the most popular posts that I've ever written, so I thought I'd chat with you about it today. I'm going to share my 5 things that every child should hear every day right after this, and I'm also going to fill you in on how we can deal with a toddler who's always swearing.
Toilet training. It's a milestone that parents look forward to. What is the best way to toilet train our children successfully? Dr. Justin Coulson has written a no mess, no fuss ebook to help called Toilet Training. Easy as 1, 2, wee. Written for busy parents, you'll whiz through a clear overview of toilet training without getting bogged down in too much detail. At just over 20 pages, the ebook can be digested in under 30 minutes. You'll find direct answers about toilet training based on scientific research, like how to know when your child is ready to toilet train, myths and conspiracies, theories about toilet training, and the most popular toilet training approaches and what science says about them. Some toilet training guides take longer to read than it should take to toilet train a child. This is the fast-flowing alternative to get your kids going at the right time in the right place and the right way. Toilet Training. Easy as 1, 2, wee. Available at major online booksellers now or at happyfamilies.com.au.
Our words have a tremendous effect on our children, and all too often we get preoccupied, we get distracted, we struggle to talk with our kids in the loving way that they need us to. It's one thing for us to eliminate the negative and stop saying all those things that we really wish we wouldn't say and that they don't need to hear, but we need to know what to replace those negative things with, or even what to replace silence or nothingness with. So, today, 5 things that we can focus on saying to our children as often as possible. Number 1, thank you. Gratitude. Gratitude is such a powerful motivator. It's much more effective than praising your kids and telling them how awesome they are. Much more effective to simply say, thanks. I really appreciate that. Because it makes our kids feel appreciated. And saying thank you also models manners and gratitude for them to follow. Saying thank you, by the way, and explaining why you're saying thanks has a really powerful impact on the relationship that you share with your child. Think about it when people appreciate you. Are you inclined to do more for them? Or do you sort of turn your back and say whatever? When you are given sincere thanks by somebody for the things that you do, chances are you turn towards them, you think, well, this person's really generous, this person's really kind, I like this person, I want to be with them more. Saying thanks makes a difference to relationships. One of my kids is particularly responsive to being thanked. Whenever I say thank you to her, she quite literally stops, she processes it, then she looks at me and she'll smile and she'll say something like, "You're welcome, Dad. I love you." And I get a great response from her every time I say thank you to her. It's magic. It's just wonderful. Saying thank you, it's something that our kids need to hear as often as possible for both the mundane and the magnificent. It's a great way to connect. It's such a great way to show appreciation, and it's a powerful way to make your family happier. The second thing that kids need to hear from us every single day is, "I'm sorry, I'm still learning just like you." Because the reality is that every day we do make mistakes with the kids, no matter how good a parent we are. Parents who act like they're the finished product, who are simply there to impart wisdom to their child, will usually just leave their children feeling judged and imperfect. Sometimes our pride gets in the way. We justify ourselves. We blame our kids when we've acted poorly. We say, well, if you wouldn't do this, I wouldn't have to do that. In fact, one of my children was once given a really, really hard time by somebody close to her, another adult, and it really distressed my daughter. I spoke with the adult and suggested that this adult might apologize to my little girl because what she had said was so inappropriate on every single level. I couldn't believe that she did it. Here's this little girl who had made a mistake and said something that she probably shouldn't have, but a fully grown adult who knows better said something really, really damaging and terribly hurtful to her. Well, this adult decided that she would go and offer the apology. Her apology went like this: "I'm sorry that you did what you did earlier that made me get angry at you and say the things that I said. If you don't want me to say those things, then you need to make sure that you don't behave that way. Now, I'm sorry, but that is not an apology." And it left my daughter feeling worse, not better. And that's not what apologizing is about, and that doesn't suggest in any way that we've actually made mistakes. All it does is transfer the blame back to the child. When we say, "I'm sorry, I'm still learning, just like you," we genuinely acknowledge our mistakes. We don't justify ourselves. We don't blame the kids when we've acted poorly. We acknowledge our mistakes. We describe how we're learning to be better people because of those mistakes. And our children learn that it's okay to admit fault and try again. This is a really powerful and important lesson for our kids. And the reality is that even when we get it completely wrong, anytime we blow up or treat them poorly, they deserve an apology. Because they're people too. And our kids need us to treat them the way they should be treated. So I'm sorry. I'm still learning just like you is number 2. Number 3, I watched how much effort you put in. You seemed to give it all you had. Because parents want their children to succeed, it's really, really easy to ask for more, to demand higher levels of performance, and to praise them when they've done really well. The thing is, praise can ultimately undermine children's performance and behaviour. The research on praise is fascinating. I'll do a podcast about why we shouldn't be praising our kids in a few weeks' time. But the pursuit of perfection also leads to disappointment. But when we let our kids know that we saw how hard they tried, we let them know that we're satisfied while ever they're doing their best, they're going to be more inspired to try, and they're not going to feel bad if they fail. Instead, they're going to be open to learning how to do better. Sometimes we're so focused on raising our kids to be awesome that we forget how awesome the kids are that we're raising. I watched how much effort you put in. You seemed to give it all you had. Or I looked at how hard you tried to make your bed. I think that you might have tried harder this morning and done a better job this morning than ever before. Or whatever it might be. Pointing out what they've done and expressing our appreciation and focusing on the effort that they're putting in. Something that our kids need to hear every day. Now, the fourth thing that I think children need to hear as much as possible is, "I love you." Now, I know this one's obvious. Every child should hear this every day, but they shouldn't just hear it. They need to see and experience evidence of it in all of their interactions with us. As we say more of these beautiful and important things and fewer of those harmful things, our kids are more likely to grow up feeling secure and confident and happy and loved. Now, I grew up in a home where we didn't really say I love you particularly much. It was said, but only really on occasions, and I wish, looking back, that I'd heard it more. I don't know that it would have made a huge difference, but I can't help but thinking that it might have. I'm really glad to say that my parents tell me that they love me more nowadays, I think, than when I was probably a kid. And I appreciate it. Maybe I'm just more lovable now than I was when I was a kid. Or maybe my parents have also come to realize just how important it is to say those things. Now, the fifth thing, the final thing that I think kids need to hear all the time is this. Well, what do you think? I think that this is possibly one of the smartest things that we can say to our children because it really empowers them. It gives them the opportunity to think through solutions, to be responsible, to come up with ideas for themselves. We often don't give our children choices, and we often don't invite our children to tell us what they think. Instead, we think that we've got all the answers. We think that if we tell them what they have to do, that we'll teach them to become responsible. And quite often it's just easier to tell them what to do rather than sit down and have a conversation with them. Plus, we're kind of into fixing. As parents, we just like to fix things. And I think that if we pause and say, I wonder what you think. What do you think is the best thing to do right now? I think that we get much better results with our kids. If we want to have responsible children, they need to be given responsibility. And one of the most powerful ways that we can help them to become responsible is to stop telling them what to do and instead ask them, what do you think you should do? And then we can encourage them if they've got a great idea, or if they totally get it wrong, we can just gently guide them. I think that by asking them what they think, they also start to develop a trust in their own opinions and in their own ideas and in their own instincts. So stop, listen, empathize if you need to, and then say, I wonder, I don't know, what do you think? I've got some ideas, but what do you think? I think that you'll find that you'll get amazing results, and your children will come up with incredible ideas. So that's my 5 things that kids need to hear more and more and more of every single day. Thank you. I'm sorry. I saw how much effort you put in. What do you think? And of course, I love you. So now it's your turn. What do you think that you should say to your children every day? What do they need to hear from us? You can leave your answer at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/3, as in the number 3. And I'll be back in a moment with answers to your questions today. How to deal with little kids who swear.
We all love our children, but sometimes they can make life challenging, and we're all searching for the right answers. In the end, all we want is happy children and happy families. Dr. Justin Coulson is one of Australia's most respected parenting voices. His seminars equipped and empowered thousands of parents to make their families happier. But sometimes getting to a parenting seminar can be tough. Now you can watch one of Dr. Justin's seminars from the comfort of your own home and at a time that works for you.
In this seminar video, available online now, you're invited to sit in on one of Dr. Justin's parenting seminars as he takes you from confusion to clarity, combining parenting research with heartfelt stories. You'll discover the 3 essential keys to raising a resilient child and creating a happy family. What your child needs from you. From Dr. Justin Coulson at happyfamilies.com.au. Download this 90-minute seminar now or purchase the DVD at happyfamilies.com.au.
This week I'm responding to a question from Ruth, who asked, "Hi Dr. Justin, my little girl is 2 years of age. Somewhere she heard you. She heard the F-bomb. Somebody said F you. And now anytime she gets angry, she comes to me and pulls my clothes and swears. But we don't speak like that in our home ever. I don't know what to do. Recently we were shopping and she got angry because I didn't let her do what she wanted. And in that moment she began to say these words loudly. People were looking at me. I felt like a bad mum. This has happened many times in public. How or what can I do to fix this?" Wow. So my response, this can be a really embarrassing situation, obviously, because people get really judgmental. And apart from that, if your values are such that you don't use that language, and in our home we're the same, having our little children use this kind of language can be terribly distressing, really upsetting, and obviously really embarrassing when it happens in public, especially when they're dropping big bombs like that all over the place. So first thing you should know is it's surprisingly common. Some research that I came across suggests that between 1/3 and 1/2 of kids between 1 and 3 will swear from time to time, and over 2/3 of kids between 4 and 7 will use language like this. So it's actually kind of normal. That doesn't make it okay, but it is kind of normal. Kids are starting to experiment and learn. So for parents, there's definitely a handful of things that we can do to handle it poorly, and there's obviously a few things that we can do to handle it well. Let me give you some tips, and hopefully this will help. Number one, what not to do. Well, don't make a big deal about it. If kids get a lot of attention, they keep doing it, just so that you notice them, especially when they're toddlers. It actually makes them feel quite powerful. They feel like, this is how I can manipulate my parents, this is how I can get their attention and their focus, and I can change the mood of the house instantly. So don't make a big deal about it. That's the first thing. The second thing, don't make horrible threats about washing their mouth out with soap or any other kind of punitive or punishing kind of ideas. Research tells us that while some kids might stop unwanted behaviours when we threaten or punish them, most kids don't stop. They just get sneakier about it to avoid getting caught, or they recognise that it's a button that they can push to get a lot of attention whenever they feel like they need it. So not a particularly effective strategy to make threats or to do horrible things to them because of it. Not a helpful thing to make a big deal about it. And you've already said you don't do this, but I'll restate it for emphasis. Another thing to make sure you don't do is don't swear in front of your kids. If you want to avoid potty mouth kids, you can't be a potty mouth yourself. Monkey see, monkey do. It's a kind of a crass way of saying it, but you know my point. The kids will copy what they hear and what they see from us. So what do you do? My first suggestion is, next time your child swears, just completely ignore it. Now, there's a chance that she might swear again. She may even do it louder and angrier. And if she does it, it's because she wants your attention, and this is how she's trying to get it. So ignore it. Now, if it's in public, you might not be able to ignore it, or if it's just getting too much to ignore and it's going crazy, then my next suggestion will be to do this. Very quietly ask, would you please use your manners? Or, how can you speak more politely? Or how can you ask for that in a way that is nice? Now, the advantage of this strategy is that when your kids get zero attention for a certain behaviour, they're more likely to eventually stop it. It's particularly the case for challenging behaviours that have attracted a whole lot of attention, like swearing out loud and getting a big reaction. Ignoring it means there's no threats, there's no getting angry. It actually means no response at all. Okay? Now, if the swearing persists, what I would suggest is that you have a gentle conversation about things, but wait until things are calm. Don't do it in the moment. If there's a big swear word, don't dive in and say, right, we need to talk about this right now, because neither you nor the child are in the right frame of mind for it. Instead, an hour later, 2 hours later, that night while you're sitting on the edge of your child's bed, tucking her in and everything's calm, you might just say something like, lately you've been getting angry and using lots of words that I don't like. Do you know what they are? And help your child to identify the issue and then discuss better ways to communicate and behave. You might even say, well, what do you think you could do instead? Going back to what I mentioned in the previous segment. This is really about trying to understand what's upsetting your child and try to see the world through your child's eyes, about identifying the emotions that your child is feeling. See, the interesting thing is your child probably wouldn't be behaving like this if her needs were being met. I'm not suggesting you're being negligent and not meeting needs, but kids have all sorts of needs at all kinds of inconvenient times, and when they don't get what they want, they often feel that they have an unmet need and they'll act out because of that. So this is really a perspective-taking exercise when things are calm. Find out, how are you feeling? Why are you behaving like that? Why are you saying those words? What's underlying it? And if you can pinpoint those emotions, give them a name and let her know that it's normal to feel angry or frustrated or disappointed or upset. And then set limits with her about what's appropriate and what's not. You might say something like, okay, well, what do you think is a much better thing to do? In our home, we don't use those words. Perhaps you could do this. See if she can come up with answers and give her some yourself. Finally, when your child's upset, this emotion coaching that I've sort of just described can be a really effective way to settle big emotions without making a fuss. If your child swears, you can actually work with her to stabilise her emotions and deal with the anger and reduce the likelihood that she'll be angry in the future or that she'll respond poorly. When she's upset, you can look at her when she swears and actually say something like, you're feeling really upset right now, come and give me a hug. Now, that's completely the opposite to what you might typically want to do, but the likelihood is you're much more likely to meet her needs. If your child was a little bit older, maybe around school age, I'd probably also suggest that you chat with them about why the language is being used, discover if they know what it means, and then set limits. So increase the level of education around that language. It's probably not going to be quite so effective with toddlers and preschoolers. And a couple of other quick points. First of all, be aware of what other kids are saying in your child's environment. Be aware of the media that your child's exposed to. Ultimately, words have got power, and when kids use certain words, they know that those words are so powerful that they command attention. They get mum, they get dad really riled up. They create a new power balance in the home. So don't give words that you don't want to hear that much power. So that's the answer to this week's question. If you would like to ask me a question, visit happyfamilies.com.au/questions. You can either leave me a voicemail message or you can email me with your question. That's happyfamilies.com.au/questions. And I'll be back right after the break with my tip of the week.
Are you pulling your hair out because your child won't listen or won't do what you request? Do you find yourself shouting at the children because you just don't know what else to do? Or are you dealing with a child that's backchatting or disrespectful? Are you finding parenting more challenging than you ever thought possible? Dr. Justin Coulson provides one-on-one parenting coaching via Skype or phone and can help you. With parenting coaching, you'll receive personalised individual guidance designed specifically for your family's unique circumstances. Find solutions to the parenting problems that are driving you crazy. Effective discipline strategies where you can stop being the drill sergeant, a better relationship with your children, and a happier home where everyone looks forward to being together. Visit happyfamilies.com.au/coaching for more information or email Kylie at happyfamilies.com.au.
This week's tip of the week relates to keeping kids happy in the car. So I'm not into giving kids iPads or devices in the car unless I'm going on a long trip. But with 6 kids, they can get pretty irritable from time to time, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So I encourage them to amuse themselves, but now and then they need a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of mum and dad interaction. So we've got a couple of games that we play that seem to be never-endingly amusing for the kids, and I just want to share these games as my tip of the week because I think that you and your kids might love them as well. The first game is called the yes-no game. And I got this off a radio show when I was a kid. My dad and I used to sit in Dad's milk truck. My dad was a milkman back in the day. And we would listen to these guys have adults on the radio who would ring in and they would ask them questions and try to get them to say yes or no or mm-hmm or or anything that could be yep or nup, any sort of a yes or no. So I will ask my children questions. They're not allowed to say yes or no or anything like it, or they're out. And it's very rare that they last more than maybe 30 seconds, but they have a ball, we laugh lots. I get to ask them lots of questions and get involved into the detail of their lives, talk to them about their friends, talk to them about school, asking them all questions, about their favourite music, whatever it might be, their favourite movies, their favourite things to do. And we just have lots and lots and lots of fun talking about their lives with them trying their hardest not to say yes or no or yep or nut or uh-huh or And we laugh a lot, and it keeps us amused for a surprisingly long amount of time. In fact, we enjoy it so much that the kids try to get me out, and Kylie, my wife, she loves playing it as well, and she gets really cranky every time I get her out. So the yes-no game is the first game that we love to play in the car, or even at home sometimes. And the second game is called 21. The object of this game is that you've got to count to 21. Each person says a number. So I might say 1, and then I wait, and somebody else in the family has to say 2, and then somebody else has to say 3. But if you talk at the same time, you start all over again. So there's no order. You've just got to start counting, and when there's been a sufficient gap where you think that you should go next, you jump in with the next number and hope that somebody else doesn't say it at exactly the same time. With the little kids playing, we're lucky to get past about the number 5, but for something so simple, you wouldn't believe how much fun it is. If you have any great ideas for games and having fun in the car, tell me about it. happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/3. Just use the number 3. And also, if there's any things that you make sure that you tell your kids every day, leave your message there at the website as well. I'd love to hear those things that you think kids need to hear every day. happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/3. Well, if you have any questions that you'd like answered, just visit happyfamilies.com.au/questions. I'll do my best to answer you in an upcoming podcast. And if you've enjoyed the episode, you can get the outline, resource links in the show notes at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/3, the number 3, of course. And if you think that this podcast has made your family happy or will make your family happier or could make other people's family happier, I'd be so delighted. I'd be really appreciative if you would visit happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/3 and you'll find a pre-populated Twitter or Facebook post that you can share with your friends and followers to get the word out about the podcast. It's you sharing it that makes it more visible and that helps me to make a bigger impact in other people's families, and that's what I believe I'm on this earth to do. So I'd be grateful. In fact, I'd be even more grateful if you would rate the podcast on iTunes, because it's your ratings that pretty much determine how likely it is that other people will discover the podcast. Your ratings increase the visibility of the podcast, and it helps other people to find out how I can help them to make their families happier. Of course, while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes as well. So please check that out and have a look and share your feelings there. Whether it's good or bad, by the way, you might actually think it stinks, but your feedback can help me to make the podcast better. So please visit there. I think that's it. That's it for this week. I'll have another podcast ready to go next week. So until then, remember that you don't have to be the best parent in the world. You just have to be the best parent in your child's world.